All right, welcome. When I woke up drastically early, I was listening to iTunes. I fell asleep to my music, and I woke up to that beautiful song from the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack, or not what it was made before that, obviously, but it was Sandy Rogers, Fool for Love. What a great song that is. I woke up and it took my mind back to this really weird, dreamy, the first time I ever felt regret. Summer of 4th grade in Phoenix, Arizona. I went to the Great Skate, the roller skating rink. By the way, it's still there. I was shocked. It's still there. But I was dropped off there. I went there with my brother and his date, and those two they went somewhere else. I think he took her and they skated out, and I was like, don't tell mom and dad we're going to go somewhere else. And I'm like, I can go, fucking bail. And back then, and still, they probably still do, they have the slow skates, where you found a partner and you slow skated with somebody. And so I met this little blonde girl. Her name was Julie. I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember she and I did a slow skate around the rink. I think it might have been to the Greatest American Hero song, believe it or not. Anyway, we did our thing and we started talking, and she had to go, and I was stuck there till I got picked up, and she and I were talking, and turned out we had the same birthdays. And so this was happening in 4th grade, and I'm like, okay. So we started talking, and she asked me for my phone number. And here's the goddamn thing. I was so paranoid because my dad and my family were ruthless in teasing me and anybody that got in their path that they could. But I was terrified. I'm like, if a girl calls my house and my parents answer, or my dad answers, or my brother, I'm never going to hear the fucking end of it. So I said, I made some excuse up. I go, let me have your number. And I could tell she felt the same way, right? So we didn't get each other's number. She left. I kept skating. I didn't think about it. The next morning, I woke up. I was on the couch. I was watching cartoons and shit, and I woke up, and my dad was at work, and the house was empty except my mom, and she was buzzing around doing whatever moms do down the hall to the kitchen, and I woke up on the couch. I remember this because I remember the color of the couch, the floral pattern of the cushions. I remember looking up at the ceiling and gazing around and going, fuck, you lost her. And it was the first time I ever felt deep regret in my heart over that cute little blonde named Julie, born on the day I was born. And we slow skated. We held hands. So my mind woke up, called back to that moment, pulled back, sucked back to that moment like it just happened, to a soundtrack. Remember that song? She was 6 and he was 7. Used to send him off to heaven when she said, you are my sunshine. Oh, how beautiful. Anyway, normally I wake up this early. I feel like I've been rode hard and put away wet. Right now I feel pretty damn good. So I'm having my coffee and I'm doing this morning podcast, or whatever you want to call these things. This is the U87AI. I'm on the big mic today in studio, and I just wanted to come on here today and just play it loosely. I'm feeling pretty decent. I have an audiobook to record, but I have to warm up and get the morning grog kicked loose before I start reading. I wanted to just jump on here and have some fun with you guys. And when I say you guys, I mean the perceived audience of ladies and gentlemen in my brain. But when you're in a studio in front of a microphone, unless you're live, you're really talking to, you're talking to a screen and you're talking to yourself here. In my case, all the voices in my head are telling me what to say, so bear with me. Nah, the truth is I'm reasonably sane, like most of us are. I think that when you get so isolated, as you can become in a VO booth or writing a book, or, even in my case, just sometimes driving the country alone, you can get isolated. You can, they call it today suffering isolation, where I don't believe that's even the case. I think that a lot of us just like to be alone, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. One time I had a talk with one of my sisters. I was like 17, 16 years old, and she said to me, she could kind of see where I was heading. She was very smart, very intuitive, and she goes, you think you'll ever get married, Jeffrey? And I said, no. I said, I don't think I will. I think I'm going to stay single, and I'm just going to be well, I didn't say this back then, so I didn't know what it meant, but I said, I think in my mind was saying, I'm just going to be a rolling stone. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I want to iterate that. I want to reiterate that to anybody out there. If you hear this, a lot of times we get, I personally, speaking for myself and not you, and I'm not a goddamn shrink, but what I can say is that from what I have seen myself growing up, my examples in my family, the marriages, the relationships, the kids, the deception, the evil, I say that lovingly and jokingly, but also deadpan seriously. There was a lot of weirdness. As a child of the Midwest, who became a child of the desert, who became a nomad, as I've been called, really, it makes sense to me that I wound up single. Now, will I ever get married? Maybe. I would like to hear your thoughts on this. I'm 54 years old. I've had one or two long-term girlfriends. So really just one really long-term one, and then a couple of just year-long, 2-year-longs. And of course, as a young man traveling, many of lucky ladies who were able to have the best 4 minutes of their life with me. Of course, I joke because it was about 2 minutes. So my point is that I would like to kind of uncover this for myself too. As I get older, I'm like, well, am I doing the right things? Should I have a girlfriend? Should I be married? Should I have somebody to grow old with? Is it so bad being alone? It's not. But back to my sister, we were talking about, she's like, you ever gonna get married? And she had a boyfriend, and I couldn't see down the road. I couldn't anticipate, I couldn't see her future, but what I wanted to say, looking back, if my old self could be my young self looking up at her, and I would have said, you're gonna get 2 beautiful children out of this guy, but he's gonna be a drug addict, he's going to cheat on you, he's going to lose his fortune, he's going to wind up living in a minivan, smoking cigarettes in a hotel with a stripper, who looks like she has been fucking caught on fire and put out with a shovel. They're going to steal from you. They're going to, rob you of your dignity. They're going to rob you of your peace of mind, of your sanity. They're going to take everything from you that has made you you. He will then die of a heart attack in a hotel room, out of prison, off and on after 10 years for meth, for theft, for God knows what. And your daughter, who is barely old enough to drive, is going to have to go to his hotel room and clean out his belongings, which are basically DVDs of porn, cigarettes, glass pipes, and, shit like that. Fucking father of the year. And back then, I really wish, I didn't like the guy when I first met him. I knew there was something wrong. Anybody who has a rich mommy like that, who has no dad, who literally gives in to every whim he conjures up from within his dark, spoiled, rotten soul. And he's like not only with my sister, but he's about to marry her and also take her away to a different state, which I was all for. I was like, right on, sis, fucking escape. That's your escape hatch right there. That cheesy little fucking Porsche 911 or 914, whatever the fuck it was. That's your get in that car and ride like the goddamned wind to your freedom. Get out of here. But that only happened for a little while. She's doing great. The kids are great. Everybody's great. But here I sit in a studio, 54 years old, talking to a perceived audience, thinking about what is happening. Not just that, but if you look around, if you really dive into 2025, it's pretty fucked up. I can say that I hope it gets better. It feels like it just might be, but we're gonna just see how this goes. I'm hopeful. I'm supportive of anything that moves us out of the muck we've been stuck in. What I tried to explain to my sister, even back in 1986, 87, whenever that was it's okay to be single. It's okay. It's okay to be alone. It's okay to carve your own path solo. Now, does it get lonely? I mean, that's a hard question. I mean, alone is not lonely. So, do I ever get lonely? I used to. I don't anymore. Do I ever feel like, what do the kids say today? FOMO? Sure. Sometimes when it comes to that, but I also understand that if you go with the wrong person, if you settle for the wrong woman, the wrong man, you are going to suffer. One of my favorite dictums, one of my favorite sayings is, I'd rather be alone than wish I was. And so, at the same time, at the very same goddamn time, sometimes I think it's a nice day downtown, or especially when I was in Europe. Now, when I was in Europe, my heart was bleeding for love. My heart, not just sex, well, that sure is too, but holding someone's hand, kissing a woman in the rain in Spain, all those things, you think about. Then you're like, why am I like this? Why am I alone in the rain in Europe? I should have my soulmate here. But then you think back. You really think back. I saw a comedian one time and he goes, I spent all these years wanting a girlfriend, and I get one, and I'm like, oh yeah. So, the grass is always greener, especially when it quit growing where you live. But at the same time, I would be open. And of course, it's okay to be single. It's okay to do what you love to do. I knew I was born mercilessly into the arts. And I don't want to sound like an art fag, or I want to say that I was born to be a writer. I was born to write. I wrote compulsively almost all my life. This is the first time, this weird era in life is the first time I haven't written anything for a long period of time. When I wrote this book called Jank, this novella, the sloppy little fun assassin novella I wrote, I was decompressing from a psychological thriller, cyberpunk, French literature style, really layered, metered novel that took me a long time to write. It wasn't even my biggest book, right? But it was a big book, but it just took all my brain power. It zapped me, but not in a bad way. A very involved, detailed novel that I paid close attention to, where, the other works I've done, it's been more just emotion, based on emotion only, just pure emotion. With this book, it was all cerebral. It was all, it was that too. It was emotion, but I wrote the goddamn book and I was very proud of it. People either loved it and they just got confused by it, or they just simply didn't like it. The work got done. It didn't matter if it was good or bad. It didn't matter. I finished a book I'd never read before. You know what I mean? So in that sense of, I'd never seen a book, I've never read a book written like that before. And that was my goal. Not just that, but just because the work was done because I wanted to try something completely different than what I normally do. One was a third-person novel, my first really big third-person piece of work. So that was cool. Also, it was to have a certain discipline within those pages that I had to adhere to, because I set those jigs in place myself, and I would not falter from them. And that was fun to do. That was a discipline that I've never experienced in any of my work at all. So that was a good time for me. That was a great, writing that book. I began that book on the border of Mexico, and I finished that book in West Seattle. The idea and the story traveled with me. So after all that weird, strange magic was over, I was in Albuquerque again. I was at my table, and I was hungry to create something. I was hungry to write. I was hungry to do something. I'm not a visual artist. I can't draw. I can kind of paint. I've tried it. Just barely above a mental deficient level for painting. I'm a lefty, so everything I do, I'm left-handed, so everything I do, just kind of, it's a lot of my favorite artists are left-handed, and it's, I feel gypped. I feel fucking ripped off. Why can't I be visually, why can't I create something with my eyes that I see in my brain and my hand creates. I mean, you can arguably say, well, you're right. Kind of the same thing, kind of the same process, kind of the same, I hate the word process, but kind of the same thing, kind of the same kind of cognition, the same kind of, or ignition, I should say. Anyway, speaking of books, let me unfurl from your couch. Let me break away from this fetal position and this psychoanalysis. Thank you for listening and jotting down notes in your pad in my mind anyway. I just wanted to, this became a mic check that went into a bunch of shit, probably because I just would love the company of a really beautiful woman again. And that's where that all comes from. So, inside and out, I'm not trying to be a mail shop pig here, but, I woke up today just kind of thinking it would be so different to have coffee with a beautiful woman. To look across, make her coffee, have a conversation, in a little breakfast nook, maybe one that I built, or just something kind of, sweet. Something, not like sexy, dirty, well, all that too, but sweet. Saccharine, something, a morning with, rain, sun, music, conversation, a deep gaze. All that stuff that, the simple pleasures, the necessities, the simple ones that are, so complicated to come by. Isn't that bizarre? That's bizarre. So upon waking up today, I was going to, before I start the audiobook, or then I have to leave my house and go face the day. But before that, I wanted to just, jump on here, warm up, work all the weird little things out of my voice. I want to read from a novella I wrote, which is called Breath Upon a Burn. It's about going to Los Angeles for the first time as a teenager on a Greyhound bus. It was an interesting experience for me, and I'm going to read that right now. The bus jerked me awake to Los Angeles. The driver warned us to stay inside the terminal, and if anyone smoked and wanted to keep their smokes, not to pull a pack out in front of the terminal. In there it was beautiful. Never had I seen such characters, such murderers. I stood outside of the terminal to see what the bus driver had been talking about. One guy pulled out a pack of smokes. He was rushed by a legion of bums. Crack mothers screamed at their crack babies. Crack fathers hustled strangers. Bums would approach me and talk to me. They offered me dope and sex. Back inside, one offered to carry my bags around for $1. A lot of hardened bums and players looked at me and nodded. Hours passed in the terminal. I had mostly forgotten about Arizona already. I found a corner and sat in front of my bike box and my bags, playing my headphones in a theater of stranded flesh. I dozed off. A security guard kicked me awake. No sleep in young blood? I stood up. He was big and black. He asked me if I was waiting for somebody. I told him I wanted to go to a beach. I told him I didn't know which one. You should go to Venice. Lots of girls and lots of freaks. Lots of everything. He laughed. He had a lot of gold in his mouth. I asked him how much a cab would cost. He told me he would give me a lift in for $20 after his shift. I told him that seemed like a lot of money for a ride. He laughed and told me I didn't know anything. I pulled out my tools and built my bike. We drove through the streets of Los Angeles, 8 a.m. During my wait for his dismissal, I had consolidated my things into one backpack. I had 3 days of clothes with me. Everything else was expendable. The streets were bright and colored with tags and ghetto art. Even the litter in the streets had a feel to it, the wonder of possibility. The bums and the prostitutes and the cops, the gangs and the old and even the cars looked like they were in scene. He pointed out the corners, pointed out schools and history. It was warm there. The old rooming houses stood proud and ugly. His dashboard was cracked, and the lines of the cracks were thick with smoke. He lit another off the butt of his last, tossed it, and got a red light. I looked to my right and stared into the eyes of a crack whore. "Want me to suck it, baby doll?" "No." He laughed behind the wheel. She shrugged and walked off. "No," he said. And that was from Breath Upon a Burn. What a fun time that really was. Looking back on it, the whole waking up and seeing that moon and that fog over Los Angeles. Now, I'd never been to Los Angeles, so I was like, 17, 18? I think I was 17, and I was watching that skyline. And it was like a different planet. It was like Mars, only cooler than that, I would imagine. But I just remember all that goodness, all that that mystery that you could feel old Hollywood. You could feel the beach, the people, the grit back then, and you could feel something which I couldn't describe until I read John Fonte, Bukowski, of course. Who else? What does a young man read? But John Fonte, his Los Angeles bled into me. When I read Ask the Dust, I lost my mind. I'm like, well, I must see Angel's Flight. I must walk Bunker Hill. I must go to Los Angeles Harbor. I must see these characters. I want to feel the characters. And it was such a beautifully, to this day, the most beautifully written novel I've ever read. And just being there through that lens, that old John Fonte lens. When I was driving one day, and I looked up, I was in Los Angeles, I was driving, I saw a street called Bandini. And I was like, I wonder if he was walking past this street and thought, Bandini, Arturo Bandini, what a great name. And it wasn't just that the writing was beautiful. It wasn't just that it was graceful and mastered, and it was divine. It was heavenly, right? But there was a music in the language, this beautiful music, this soothing but edgy but classically composed throughout. I mean, it had the echoes of everything in that book. The way he wrote that literally lifted me and has never once dropped me from that lift in my entire life, whole fucking entire existence. I am still lifted from Ask the Dust, period. That book, along with Newt Hampson's Hunger, made me want to write novels. I didn't choose to want to write novels when I read them. No, those books commanded me to write. That is when you know that art is pure, when it strikes you so undeniably and so irrefutably. You cannot touch something that brilliant. You cannot approach it. It's with any other word except for it made me do something, right? In a good way. I'm not talking like, kill a beetle level. But at the same time, it instructed me on what to do, really. Not how to do it, but just the feeling which will fuel the beginning of what I should be doing. How cool is that? So I was lucky to have stumbled into that, to stumble upon that writer, those writers. I was lucky to have that, because where parenting failed me, where crucial life lessons from an absent-minded family, after the sudden death of my mom, what was absent from that, what was ripped away from that experience was replenished and also kind of taught very hard to me from these minds of these great men who, most of them dead. But when John Fonte, when I read that, the struggle of that young man and the heart beating within him, and this heart just wrapped around the world and wrapped by the world, all those levels, the genius of that book and the raw emotion, the bravery of that book, I was like, holy fuck. Okay, maybe how I feel, maybe how I see things, maybe my perception, maybe I'm not alone in that perception. Who else like him might somewhat think like me? Who else has the same thoughts? And that opened a door to a different writer, a different philosopher, different genres. It went on and on and on, and it has never stopped. It never stopped. So, there's a lot of gratitude that I feel. There's a lot of gratitude I feel for the dead. For me to be able to call back to John Fonte and Los Angeles and crack fathers and crack mothers, and dope fiends It was just a beautiful, hazy, moon-drenched memory. Gritty, disgusting skyline, famously bathed in that moonlight and smog. What a beautiful, beautiful thing to see with such a formative mind, right? And when age only enhances a lesson from youth, a memory, a visual like that, but it only makes it stronger and better and more important to you, that's when you know you've witnessed something true, something real. So I should start getting ready for this audiobook session. I should get out the door afterward. I have a few things to do today, but get to work. But it's a big, beautiful day out there. Hopefully it is where you are too. But I gotta go, and I'll talk to you in the brand new video. And as always, take good care.